Hey, hello, welcome to Fitness Freedom Podcast. Today I have a special guest, Lexi Bonilla. She is a licensed clinical social worker and the founder of Inner Bloom Counseling, a virtual therapy practice based in Madison, Wisconsin, which is where I live as well. She helps women heal their relationships with food and their bodies, move toward food freedom and body peace, and break free from perfectionism and self criticism. And she believes healing starts with curiosity, not criticism. Welcome, Lexi. I'm so happy to have this episode conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So you're in Madison right now?
Yes, yeah, a little bit outside of Madison, but yep.
And I also saw that you work in Illinois as well. Do you have clients in Illinois?
Yeah. Yeah, so I just recently got licensed in Illinois to kind of hopefully like broaden my reach. And so it's it's interesting trying to figure out like how do I now market to an entirely new state.
Yeah. Well, cool fact is I have quite a few listeners in Illinois. So,
Awesome. That's
yeah,
great.
that's great. So, can you tell us a little bit about your story, as much or as little as you'd like to share, and how you got into this work? Like, what led you into this eating disorder recovery work as a therapist?
Yeah, totally. So I guess taking it back to graduating high school and trying to figure out what you want to do with your life and just like not really knowing, and so started college undeclared, and was just really trying to figure things out. I think you kind of have the noise from like your parents of like what they think you should do, and my family was like, you should be a lawyer, you should be a doctor, and I'm like, okay. Like big shoes to fill there. And I just yeah, just wanted to keep it really open and just start to explore like what was out there. And I found sociology as something that really like resonated and connected with me. And I think it just like really opened my eyes to a different way of viewing people, the world, society, culture. And so I think it was, yeah, like sophomore, junior year, I decided to major in sociology and just like really learn about how like systems of oppression impact us, how it influences human behavior, really like leaning away from the model of like pathologizing ourselves and really just getting curious about like our environment and how it shapes us. So I think that provides kind of like the backstory to my interest in just like supporting communities. And so after college, I worked at a nonprofit where I worked with like chronic homelessness and substance use. I was helping folks like in the community with a transitional housing program where my office was actually like in the apartment where people were living. And so I was sort of like a hands-on support staff to just help people navigate these complex systems of housing, of social security benefits, food pantries and food stamps, and just really helping, folks kind of gain these like independent living skills. And so I did that work for about 3 years. And I think before I even had the language for like what burnout or like compassion fatigue was, like I was there. Like looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
you were burnt out, which kind of makes sense when it's like you're thrust into like a really high needs population at 21 years old, and just like not, what I mean, like just being so fresh to like the field of social work and like community care. And so I really just started thinking like, okay, how can I continue to support folks just maybe in a different capacity? I found like my favorite part of doing that work was the relationships that I built with people. And so like therapy kind of popped into my mind of like, maybe that would be a helpful route for me to pursue. And so, yeah, I landed in the Masters of Social Work program at UW-Madison. Um, and I felt like it was really helpful to have those 3 years of doing like community mental health prior to pursuing my master's because I felt like it just really gave me so much rich experience and like a lens to view things. And so then what kind of led me to eating disorders. So I think like connecting those dots, it was my systems lens and how does our environment shape us, and then sort of finding like this whole population of folks really impacted by diet culture and fat phobia and these systems that just teach us that our worth is tied to our body, our weight, our shape. And so I interned at a private practice where a few of the therapists there specialized in eating disorders. And I got to like learn from them, shadow their sessions. I got to co-facilitate a like body image support group, and just really loved the population and just really felt passionate about like helping people understand that, their body was never a problem to fix. And like, how can we bring some curiosity to these messages that we've internalized about ourselves, about the world? Um, and I think I just noticed a lot of similar traits in the like high achieving, perfectionistic, like over functioning, like those are things that I could definitely resonate with and like the people that I was supporting. And so I think that also kind of drew me to this population of like, yeah, like we definitely, have some similarities there. And then yeah, I decided to launch my own practice and knew I really wanted to have like a specialty and a niche and a focus where I could really just continue like growing and learning. And so that's where I landed.
I love that. Thank you. That's so clear, and I'm following. And I'm curious.
Okay,
One
yeah.
question I asked, I'm curious about is, what about maybe when you were a child, or like the essence of your personality
Mm,
informed that interest in seeing systems and understanding people within systems? Like, can you look back and
mm,
see as a kid,
yeah.
like, oh yeah, I really thought that way, or is this, I enjoyed this aspect of something that made me curious, like something you've carried throughout your life that
Yeah.
maybe informed that curiosity?
Oh, that's such a good question. I feel like that's something that I've been pondering for myself for a while is like, what does draw me to have such a like strong social justice like orientation? Um, like, I don't know. It's kind of a mystery to me because I feel
Cool.
like maybe it's just the fact that like I'm very different from my family, like in so many ways. And so I don't know if it was just, yeah, maybe me trying to like make sense of that, of like how is this the environment that I grew up in, and yet like it's not the outcome that you would expect based on that.
Okay, cool. I love
If
that.
that, yeah,
That's
if
really
that makes
cool.
sense.
And I appreciate how your practice is has been guided by this sociocultural lens of like the systems that we live in, and kind
Totally.
of like yelling at the people in the system, like kindly yelling, like, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with you. It's the system
Hmm.
that's messed up," and then
Yeah.
supporting them in it. That's really cool. So
Hmm.
you've been in working with eating disorders predominantly, which is so cool, and it never ends. The research is always new. There's always so much to learn, and I love that
Totally.
aspect of this work. But how would you, from your inner perspective as a therapist, what would
Hmm.
you say about the prevalence of eating disorders these days? Like, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. So
Yeah.
from the therapist chair, what do you observe?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think they're far more common and impact far more people than we like to admit or than we even realize. Um, I think a huge misconception is that like you can tell if someone has an eating disorder just by looking at them, and right, like that is not the case whatsoever. Um, and so I think it just impacts like all walks of life, all genders, all ages, all races. I see a lot of a lot more prevalence around like major life shifts or transitions. So like that shift from high school to college, that shift from I mean, I guess even like college into like adulthood, or like perimenopause and menopause, like those shifts and the body changes that come with, you know, all of those changes. And so I think that's something I noticed where it shows up quite a bit, because we're unfortunately taught that like our body should never change.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when suddenly it's changing because we're pregnant or we're approaching perimenopause or we're no longer an athlete like we were in high school or college, right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
brings up a lot of like distress and a lot of like, ooh, how do I manage this discomfort?
Yeah, for me it was puberty. And
Sure.
yeah, and I think that's common
Yeah,
too. Yeah. But it's good to note that it can happen through all stages of life. It's not just when you're
totally.
young. It's
Yeah.
okay. And then can you maybe give us some nuances between, because I think a lot of people when they hear eating disorder, they're like, oh no, no, not me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's just not me. Because we have that, like you said, we have that image of what an eating disorder is. Like,
Yeah.
what about disordered eating or disordered
Mm,
exercise behaviors? Like, do
yeah.
you see what are the nuances between like an eating disorder versus like disordered eating, or like how can people maybe identify? Because you're right, it is so prevalent, and I think a lot of us have these behaviors without maybe recognizing them.
Totally. Yes. Yeah. I think this is such a important conversation because when I think about disordered eating, like I think about anything with like food, body, exercise that feels stressful.
Ooh, that's a good definition. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because it's essentially like, okay, does the thought of food stress me out? Like, does what I'm going to eat, does, trying to like plan or track, or is food just kind of like constantly on my mind? And yeah, does it feel stressful? Does it impact the way I show up day to day in relationships, at work? And then I think that's where you kind of start to move from like disordered eating to an eating disorder is really like that impact on functioning. And so like
Mm.
truly like how much is it impacting your ability to like be present, to engage in relationships, to, go to work, go to school. Like I think when it verges into an eating disorder, like we see a lot of like guilt and shame and isolation. So we're starting to maybe withdraw from like really important and close people in our lives. Um, and it just kind of, the eating disorder just really like steps into the driver's seat. Like it just starts calling all the shots, making all the decisions. Just feels all consuming in
Mm.
some cases. But yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting line to balance like because unfortunately so much of our relationships with like food and body and exercise are disordered and that's like praised and normalized. Like it's so normalized for exercise to be viewed as like a punishment or like a way to like burn off what we ate or earn what we're going to eat, and like some people wouldn't even bat an eye at that. So like why would they identify as it being disordered? They're like,
Absolutely.
that's what's praised. That's what's like expected of me.
Yeah. And I want to go into that, but I just want to note that like with, and you can help me out here, you know more, but with diagnosing eating disorders, there are like certain
Mm-hmm.
criteria in the
Sure.
DSM, which can make
Yeah.
it tricky because how do you measure shame or how do you measure guilt?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for people to know not just like, oh, I'm not really underweight enough, or I don't binge enough, or I don't do
Mm-hmm.
this enough, so I can't be
Yeah,
bad enough. Like take note rather on how it impacts your life, like you said, the impact and
totally.
like how much
Yeah.
it's like invading your life, so to speak, taking
Mm-hmm.
over your life. But what you were saying about like how it presents nowadays, what do you notice about
Mm-hmm.
how it's presenting? Because it's shifted over, culturally, it's the core has stayed the same, but like it shows differently in 2026 or this
Yeah.
mid 2020s. How does it present nowadays? Like what
Yeah.
do we see? Because it's so
I
normalized.
totally. And I think a lot really does come from like social media, and just like our online presence and what we like the information that we're consuming. And I think I'm seeing just a lot of discourse around like willpower and discipline and like you need to have an aesthetic goal. And this is just like impacting so many like young women, older women, men too. I don't specialize. I primarily work with women, but I mean, that's like a whole other conversation we could talk
Hmm.
about is like the
Hmm.
impact on men as well. But yeah, I mean, social media is just, it's really painting a picture of, you know, how much emphasis and attention we should give on like our bodies and food. The what I eat in a day, the follow my training program, buy these, it's just so much of it is you kind of follow the paper trail of like diet culture is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and so it's continuing to sell the promise of, weight loss. Obviously, the GLP-1 surge is happening right now. And even if you're not on social media, you're being exposed to GLP-1 ads. Like they are everywhere.
They are.
Um, and so I don't know. I think it's just painting a really interesting picture for folks of like, okay, if I just accept my body for like what it is and what it looks like, does that mean that I'm not like that I don't care about my health? Does that mean that I'm not a disciplined
Yeah.
person? Does that mean I don't have willpower? Um, so yeah, I don't know. I really see social media being like a huge influence on like how we relate to our bodies.
Agreed. And there's so many images we see in a day that even if it doesn't enter our conscious mind, even if we're not like aware of it, it
Hmm.
still impacts us.
Totally.
And diet culture, fitness culture really extracts certain traits that they deem more valuable. So, willpower is one of them, like discipline is one of them. And then we as a
Hmm.
society praise it, so it perpetuates it. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of the same message in different forms, like kind of
Hmm.
evolving to like get around
Yeah.
like so we don't have those warning signs. Like we would probably scoff at something like, oh, drink a slim fast for every meal and count
Hmm.
all your calories. Like that's a little
Yeah.
bit more old school, but now it's like you got to be
Yeah.
strong or skinny talk or healthy. I got
Mm.
to be healthy. Like that's so huge.
Yes. No, yeah, it really, I think diet culture has disguised itself under like wellness culture.
Oh yes.
And so it's the same thing as like, yeah, like the Slim Fast and the Weight Watchers, but now it's like repackaged in a cutesy little bow with like wellness and
Yes.
health. And like we just have to be so careful with like how we're defining health and like what that means to us.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Where are the definitions? So you
Hmm.
said that earlier you noticed with a lot of eating disorder clients that they had certain traits about like
Hmm.
perfectionism, criticism. What
Yeah.
are some common, and I know that there's like restrictive type, there's like binge eating disorder and
Hmm.
bulimia, like there's different, we got ARFID and orthorexia, like all these other
Totally.
categories of eating
Hmm.
disorders. But what are some common themes or traits that you notice in people with eating disorders? Because
Yeah.
I know it can be kind of healing to feel seen if you feel like, oh, I have this and this is a bad thing, but it can also be a strength and this like seeing those parts of ourselves with more compassion. So, like for anyone
Yeah.
listening who might suspect that they have an
Hmm.
eating disorder or someone they love, like what are some themes and that you notice or traits?
Yeah. So, I mean, I really think of eating disorders as like a mood or an emotion disorder. And so, like, what I mean by that is, I think at the root of like all the different types, like whether it's anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, ARFID, like there's a component of emotional avoidance. So, really, just this piece of like, I think for any human, it is hard to sit in uncomfortable emotions. Like we do whatever we can to, right, like avoid, to numb, to soothe. Um, and I think that's essentially how an eating disorder functions is like, I'm feeling this really uncomfortable emotion, whether it's guilt, shame, grief, rage, and I need to figure out a way to like control that, avoid that, numb that, soothe that. Um, and so I really help folks understand that their eating disorder is a protective part of them. It's a part that, maybe developed as a way to help keep them safe. Um, and so I know like some people listening are probably thinking of like, how is an eating disorder protecting someone? Which totally I hear that. I think it's like it has positive intent, like it wants to keep you safe from, maybe the pain of rejection, the pain of, feeling unworthy. But then the blueprint that it follows, like, doesn't exactly have a positive impact on you. And so I think when we can start to see it in that light of just like, okay, it wants to help me. It's protective in nature. Like, how can I get curious about like, what is it protecting me from? What am I afraid, or what is this part of me afraid would happen if it didn't do this job?
Yeah, that's a good question. Can you give an example of what that looks like? Because I'm sure people are like, "Oh, that sounds right. Like I can feel it in my body.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds right."
Yes.
But like,
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like in actual behaviors? Like avoiding
Yeah.
emotions and turning to an exercise behavior or an eating behavior
Mm,
or,
yeah.
body image behavior. Like, what is that? Can you just give it an example of what that looks like?
Totally. Yeah. So I think it really, for a lot of people, boils down to like a sense of control when everything else feels very out of control. So it's kind of functioning off of like the primary belief that like if I can control the way my body looks, if I can control what I eat and how much I exercise, then I will finally feel, insert whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
worthy, accepted, loved. Um, and so, yeah, it just tries to exert control. It tries to kind of step in and help you feel safe. So whether that's, yeah, like really controlling and tracking like your calories or what you're eating in a day. I think on the other side of, so a lot of times people find themselves in like a binge restrict cycle. So like you can see how like the restriction functions as like control, like stay on
Mm-hmm.
track, like don't. And then the binge is more of a like, well, how do I, for a lot of people, how do I like soothe or numb some of the like uncomfortable emotions that I'm feeling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like turning off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, turning
Totally.
off.
Yeah.
Or like if it is that cycle binge restrict, it's like you get so tired of that controlling voice. And then there's a
Mm-hmm.
part of you that wants to rebel against it and be like, fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore. And like, I'm just gonna eat
Right.
whatever I want. And then the guilt comes and
Mm-hmm.
then the restriction. Yeah. So it's a process.
Yeah.
I also see with people on the other side of the coin with exercise, there's like a compulsion. It's like exercise is their only maybe soothing tool where it's like if I
Mm.
don't get my exercise in for the day and like everyone has most of the time people have rules like this much exercise or this many calories or this distance run or whatever, like
Yeah.
I can't feel good about myself, like I have to
Mm.
do this no matter how tired I am or how my body is responding, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter, I have to do this to feel okay. Like it's that like avoiding emotion, like I'm just going to put everything onto this exercise and it becomes like
Mm-hmm.
a lifeline, so to speak.
Totally.
Hmm. So with recovery, turning into like
Mm-hmm.
moving into like what it looks like to recover. Well, first of all, if people are like noticing themselves or just like kind of like reflecting or thinking about this a little bit more deeply, what would you say to someone who wants to recover or is like, wow, I could maybe feel better
Mm-hmm.
from
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I think a lot of work really comes down to, like understanding your values. And so with an eating disorder part and with diet culture, we are able to sort of see like these are the things you were taught to value. So like thinness is a huge one. You know, pursuing thinness at all costs is something you should value. You should value, you know, your appearance and um, yeah, like how how much exercise you do, right? So like you can kind of start to differentiate like, okay, what are diet culture's values versus like what are the things that I actually value? Like what is truly meaningful and important to me? Um, and I think, you know, for a lot of people, initially it's like that feels like my value too. Like I can't separate from that. Like that just feels so true to like me and who I am. But I think like once we start to create a little bit more distance and separation from diet culture, from that eating disorder part of us, we do start to see that like there are other things at the top of our list. And you know, unfortunately, like it does get so impacted and influenced by diet culture because it's all around us. Like we're all like just constantly swimming in it. But we do start to see like what are the things that are aligned with like who I am or who I want to be.
Yeah.
And we can start to see that like those things that diet culture is telling us don't line up.
Hmm. Yeah, a big part of healing is becoming yourself again, so to speak.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like I would
Right.
see that with clients, like it's like the life came back because the eating disorder
Mm-hmm.
just really, like you said, takes over in the driver's seat and it's like a
Mm-hmm.
parasite that starts eating off of your energy and like sucking
Right.
the life out of
Mm-hmm.
you. And I remember that from my own recovery too. It's like, oh, I'm a person and I like
Mm-hmm.
things and I have preferences and I
Mm-hmm.
actually enjoy this and I can enjoy this. I'm allowed to. Like, that's such a big
Yeah.
part of recovery. And that, I
Totally.
guess, comes with learning to regulate and get back in touch with your emotions that you've been denying for a long time. Like,
Totally. Right. Yeah. And sometimes we really just are so cut off from like what we want for ourselves, what we're needing. Um,
mhm,
you know, there's like those protective parts of like people pleasing where it's like, okay, I have to make everyone else happy and content. And then, you know, I understandably start to lose sight of like, so what do I want here? Like
mhm,
what's important to me when, you know, we're so just like our nervous systems are just wired for safety and survival.
mhm.
And so a lot of the times like we do disconnect from like what is authentic and true for ourselves.
Yeah. That's something that's like with eating disorders especially. I love the analogy that I use in my work is like coming back home to your body because
Mm-hmm.
your body becomes an unsafe place, so to speak. Like it's
Yeah.
the place you want to feel safety, but it also at the same time feels so scary. Like it's like you then after the eating disorder takes over, it's like I want to leave my
Mm-hmm.
body, and it just like becomes
Totally.
so challenging, so challenging. So what are some you've already shared some like ideas, even just like talking about parts and with IFS
Yeah.
and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but like what are some helpful tools and reframes for recovery?
Yeah. So when I think about helpful reframes, I think about, I guess, just like the two main pillars of a lot of the work that I do, one being intuitive eating and
Mm,
the other being health at every size. And so I know there's like so much I could say about either of those pillars, but I think just like helping people learn that there is a path to trusting our bodies again. There is a path to like honoring the inherent wisdom that our bodies possess. And so I think we can really find that in intuitive eating. And then health at every size, I really just see as like a social justice movement that helps us understand that like you do not have to be thin in order to be healthy. And there are so many like social determinants of health um, that we should pay attention to. And also just how much like weight stigma impacts people's health and access to
mhm,
quality health care and things like that. So I think those are big reframes in the sense that like a lot of that terminology, a lot of the information that comes from those concepts is like pretty new. and can take some time to like really embody or even like agree with. And so sometimes like early on in recovery, we will practice a skill of like disobey before I disagree. So, initially, like I might not disagree with what my eating disorder is telling me, and that's
Mm,
okay. Can I still disobey it? So if it's telling me like, don't order what you actually want, order the like lower calorie option. And like my whole everything within me is saying like, yeah, I 100% agree with what it's telling me.
mm-hmm.
Can I disobey it? Can I, choose the opposite action here?
Mm,
Um, Same with right exercise of like, maybe the eating disorder is telling me like you didn't do enough, you're not sweating enough, you didn't burn enough calories, like you need to keep going. But maybe I notice my body's like kind of signaling like, hey, we're done, like we're pretty tired. Can I disobey in that moment even if I don't disagree with it?
wow. That's really helpful, especially in like the beginning
Yeah.
stages when it's like
Mm-hmm.
you just start to learn like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a voice that I can listen to or not. Like I can choose.
Right. Yeah. Very empowering, I think, for people to learn like, oh, I can take back some of the control in this situation.
And it's so helpful to understand too, like you said, the intuitive eating, the HAES, and like health at every size, it's systemic. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like with recovery, it's like, oh, I have to fight against this huge, like opponent that I'm not
Mm-hmm.
equipped to fight, and just understanding that we're all in this system, like we live in this culture with these specific messages that have been fed to us since we were born. Of course, it's challenging, but we can
Mm-hmm.
one person at a time change those ideas. And then a lot of people with like especially someone with an eating disorder, I would say, having been in this place before, if they were to hear health at every size, they'd
Mm-hmm.
be like, oh, no, 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 no,
Right.
no, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Because if I do that, if I believe that, then I'm just gonna gain weight. And that's like the scariest thing for me. Right. Or like
Exactly.
intuitive
Exactly.
eating, like sounds nice, but no, I'm gonna keep my rules. Thank you very much.
No,
Yeah,
100%.
right. Like it's
100%.
so hard to undo that. But like, can you maybe like maybe dilute it a little bit or extract it a little bit? Like someone in that
Mm-hmm.
mindset, how could that
Yeah.
be maybe a key to opening a door of liberation for them? Like
Mm.
those concepts, how could it like actually maybe be freeing so they hear it and they're like, okay, maybe I'm not ready, but slowly I'm going to inch towards that.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That's such a good question.
health
Yeah.
at every size, which is basically the idea that health does not equal weight, weight does not equal health, or intuitive
Mm-hmm.
eating, like trusting your body rather than relying on
Yeah.
rules. Like, how could that feel exciting? Or even like just a
Mm.
little bit of like maybe interesting to someone who's like really opposing it or really against those ideas in the eating disorder mind.
Yeah. No, I think that's such a good question. I mean, I think it's just really like small, itty bitty steps. So like even I as a therapist have to sometimes like slow myself down of like, yeah, like intuitive eating, how did it like all these things are so great. But you're right, like sometimes hearing that is like absolutely not. Or like there's this idea of like, I will never be an intuitive eater. Like I'm just too messed up around food.
Yes,
Like I
yes,
think a
yes,
lot
yes.
of people feel that. And so it's just like tiny, tiny baby steps. And so, I mean, I think with every person it looks a little bit different, but yeah, just starting to really like work together to figure out like what is like one micro step that you can take in, yeah, like restoring trust with your body, with, learning how to like implement a pause. I
Mm,
think like sometimes the most like healing work can really just be, and like if future me would have just immediately like acted on that urge or, felt that discomfort and then immediately tried to soothe it. Like, what is just one pause, one deep breath? Like, what does that do differently for us? What, kind of space does that create for us? Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's a tough question because I think like everybody is just like on this kind of spectrum. Like everyone's kind of in a different place. And so it's really just, understanding for yourself of like what is one step that I can take to
Mm,
having a more peaceful relationship with food, with my body. Um, sometimes that's thinking about like hunger and fullness. And, like if I'm a person that historically restricts and I don't allow myself to eat until I'm like extremely hungry, can I just eat when I'm like very hungry? And is that like the one
mhm.
step that I can take to like honor my body?
Yeah, yeah, that's so helpful. It's like one step at a time. Doesn't you don't have to tackle
Yeah.
everything and know everything and be like healed because that can also be like
Right. Yeah.
self-criticism.
Well, and I think sometimes too, like people approach recovery from that same lens of like, I have to do this perfectly,
Exactly.
otherwise I'm failing. And so it's like
Yeah.
also working with that of like, nope, we are going to mess up. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to regress at times. And like that is all perfectly okay. And that is all, part of being a human.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's so much to talk about. Like like perfectionism and how that feels safer sometimes than being a messy human and
Hmm.
like rewiring our brains, so to speak, and practicing in our bodies that it's safe to be imperfect or it's safe to be messy. It's safe to be human. What I'm feeling right now is okay. It doesn't have to be a
Hmm.
certain thing. I don't have to perform a certain way. Like I can extend unconditional love to myself and like just being present with it can be really transformative too. Like just being present with it,
Totally.
even if it's uncomfortable. That's so
Hmm.
helpful. This is such a rich conversation. Like this is so helpful. And I hope that a lot of like light bulbs go off. And even if you don't like experience disordered eating behaviors or an eating disorder, like just becoming more aware of how it does impact us because we all are impacted by it. Like everyone
Hmm.
is. So
Right. No one's immune from it.
yeah. Yeah. If you live in the world, yeah, especially. And then we have our genes and epigenetics from our parents. So even if you are like stranded in the Alaskan wild, like there's gonna be some genetic components to it. So thank you so much. This is
Totally.
so helpful. And we're not alone. Like there are people like you who want to
Yeah.
help people, like people like us who want to do this work and help people have more peace in their bodies with their bodies. I ask every guest a question at the
Totally.
end, and I'm going to ask you, but before I do, can you share, please, where
Yeah.
people can find you? And for those of us listening in Wisconsin or Illinois, you can actually reach out and work with Lexi. So, what would you like to share, Lexi?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So I think number one, just my website. It's innerbloomcounseling.org. That's where you can find, yeah, my different like specialties, a little bit more like about me and how I work and how I support folks. And that's where you can reach out if you would like to schedule a free consult call. I do a free consult call with everybody just to, make sure that we're a good fit because I think, with therapy, like the most important piece, like I could have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't feel safe in my presence, if we don't have good trust and rapport, then like
Mm-hmm.
therapy won't be as effective. And so I really prioritize like goodness of fit and finding a therapist that you really connect with and feel safe with. Because I think so much of that healing also comes within that therapeutic relationship.
Yeah.
But yeah, so website is a great place to learn more. And then also I am pretty active on Instagram. My handle is Inner Bloom Counseling LLC. And if you want maybe sort of like safe respite from all the like diet culture, skinny talk
Mm-hmm.
noise, um, I try to post just a lot of like really helpful content around like yeah, body respect, and food freedom and things like that.
And you really do. You really do. It's
Thanks.
yeah, I think following positive accounts like yours can be so healing
Totally, yeah.
for like
It's
just
really helpful to, yeah, like diversify your feed, like find creators that are, promoting like body diversity and um intuitive eating and like all these things, especially if you're really curious about it. I think like having more and more of those creators show up on your feed sort of train your algorithm.
Mhm. Yeah, and in terms of like working together with Lexi, like we met, you came up, we were at an eating disorder recovery event, and you just came up to me and you have like a very grounded, open, like calm but friendly presence. So I'm sure a
Yeah, I
lot of people
appreciate that.
who hear this, and yeah, we've been talking for, almost an hour now. Okay, last question. If you could share
Yeah.
one message of health with the world, everyone can hear, they
Mm-hmm.
could really hear it, or could like blast a text to their phones or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
however we're imagining
Yeah.
this. What would you say? What would you want to share with the world about health?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think my biggest thing is always like your body is not a problem to fix, and like your body wants to be your friend.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Can we just like take that in for a little bit? Can you say it one more time and like, can we take that in, those two things?
Yeah, yeah. Your body is not a problem to fix, and your body wants to be your friend.
That's so healing. Just hearing that. It's so true. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to hear it more often for sure.
Yeah, your body's not a problem to be fixed. Ah, that's so good. Thank you so much, Lexi. This is
Yeah,
rich,
thank
and I
you.
can't wait for all the listeners to hear this. And thank you for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, your time, and energy with us today.
Of course, thank you. This was great. I could talk about it all day, so.
I know we could. I know we could, but we'll pause here.